Trophy Dark is a game by Jesse Ross about doomed treasure hunters in a forest that does not want them there. This is not a game about heroic adventurers that slay dragons and bring untold fortunes back to town. This is a horror story about entitled pillagers meeting tragic ends. The game is intimate, highly collaborative and improvisational, played by a GM and 2 to 4 players, usually over a single session. It's centered around the principle of playing to lose. The treasure hunters are doomed from the very beginning, so it encourages players to lean into failure, to embrace tragedy, and to make their inevitable demise memorable. You'll need an incursion to run, which is what Trophy Dark calls its pre-written adventures. And these incursions are skeletal frameworks that lay out the theme. They offer flavorful narrative prompts and also describe the various threats and horrors that await the treasure hunters. Incursions are always structured into 5 distinct phases called rings. As each ring passes, the treasure hunters push further and further into the forest. The stakes are raised, the tension grows, and the danger intensifies. Character creation is fast, with tables for your character's name, occupation, and background, and these are really fun. Fancy playing a poet, formerly a defrocked priest? Why not? A bodyguard only doing this job due to a whaling injury? Sure. And these descriptions aren't just colour, these occupations and backgrounds will furnish your character with the skills they will call on when acting under pressure. You will also need a drive, which is your character's motivation, their reason for being desperate enough to go on this incursion in the first place. And these are really evocative, such as become part of the Swirling Court or resurrect the Cult of Derawan. But what the Swirling Court is, or who the Cult of Derawan actually are, is never explained in the book. It's up to the player to define and make personal to their character. Lastly, you will take up to 3 rituals, which are dangerous spells you can cast to perform miraculous feats. All treasure hunters can use rituals, regardless of background or occupation, and they are simply presented with a brief description of an effect. The number of rituals you take is very important. Treasure hunters don't have hit points, but they do have ruin. Your ruin increases when you witness something disturbing and lose your nerve. When you hit 6 ruin, you are lost to the forest. Everyone starts at 1, but you will begin the game with 1 additional ruin for each extra ritual you take. So taking 3 rituals is undeniably tempting, but your starting ruin will be 4. And whilst your ruin will increase and decrease throughout the game, it can never go below this starting value, so choose wisely. Once everyone is set up and ready, the GM introduces Ring 1 and the game begins, building a shared story with the players as the treasure hunters react to the forest, its temptations and terrors. Trophy Dark is very much a narrative game, but whenever the characters try and do something dangerous, the players roll dice. There are 5 roles in Trophy Dark, and perhaps the most important is the risk roll. When a player attempts something risky or dangerous, they state what their character is trying to do and what they hope to achieve. But these rolls have weight, and before dice hit the table, the players and the GM enter into a narrative negotiation. We go around the table, and the GM and the other players will suggest what will happen if the risk roll fails. Now, the GM has final say, but there is a constant ebb and flow as each player builds on the other's ideas and refines them into interesting consequences. With the stakes set, we assemble the dice pool. Trophy Dark uses D6s in 2 colours, representing light and dark dice. For a risk roll, a treasure hunter can take 1 light die if they have a skill relevant to what's being attempted. Let's say a character is trying to sneak past some bandits. Stealth would definitely be relevant, as is silence, or maybe paths. If you can justify it in the narrative, you can do it. And even if you have multiple skills that are relevant, they don't stack, you just get the 1 die. And if you don't have a relevant skill, well, you don't get a die at all. Then the GM and the other players will offer the player making the roll something called a devil's bargain. A devil's bargain is a narrative complication that will happen regardless of the roll's outcome. But why would you willingly accept a complication? Well, because doing so gets you an additional light die, therefore doubling your chance of success. So let's go back to our example with our treasure hunter attempting to sneak past some bandits. A basic devil's bargain could be that no matter what happens, the treasure hunter will lose the map that we've all been following, or they'll lose their precious weapon. That's a devil's bargain. A more interesting devil's bargain would be that no matter what happens, our treasure hunter will recognise one of the bandits from their past. The player attempting the roll can choose to accept exactly one of these devil's bargains or reject them all. You make the deal, you take the die, you pay the cost. Once your table gets into the groove of devil's bargains, it becomes second nature, and as a result, players will always be thinking creatively for opportunities to raise the stakes and enrich the narrative in interesting ways. A character can choose to add a dark die to the pool if they are willing to risk their body or spirit, if they really want to put themselves in harm's way. And it's also worth noting here that if you are using the risk roll to perform one of your rituals, you have to add a dark dice to the pool, which is reflective of how dangerous and unpredictable rituals can be. The GM can also choose to add a dark die if they think the situation is sufficiently dangerous to demand it. So in this example pool, we have 2 light dice and 1 dark. But what are we looking for? Success is tiered. 1 to 3 is a failure, 4 to 5 is a success with complications, and 6 is a success. Your highest die is what counts for the result. So let's roll. Okay, we have a 2, a 4, and a 5. The highest die is a 5, so that makes this roll a success with complications. Now you could re-roll this entire pool if you want to change the result, although that comes at a cost of adding an additional dark die. And you can do this as many times as you want, adding 1 more dark die each time. But whenever you make a risk roll or re-roll one, you must stop if the dark die is the highest result. And if the dark die is higher than your current ruin, then your ruin increases by 1. Dark dice also break ties, so a 6 on a dark dice is still a 6, therefore a success, but it will increase your ruin. There's no combat in Trophy Dark, but you can certainly fight mundane threats such as other humans or wild animals using the risk roll. But if you attempt to fight anything supernatural or a monster, you instantly die. So you'll want to use the risk roll here to evade or avoid these threats instead. Or you could use one of your rituals if you're prepared to accept the consequences. Other players can assist with a risk roll by making a help roll. The treasure hunter doing this describes narratively how they are helping and how it also might expose them to danger. However, they can only offer this help if there is already at least 1 dark die in the pool. The helping hunter rolls a light die and adds it to the others, but if that die matches the result on any dark die, their ruin goes up by 1. Whenever a treasure hunter witnesses something disturbing or is faced with something horrific, they are called upon to make a ruin roll. This is just 1d6 rolled and compared against your current ruin. If you roll higher than your current ruin, then your ruin goes up. Pretty straightforward. When your ruin increases, the GM will give you one of the incursion's specific themed conditions, which are physical or mental transformations your treasure hunter goes through as they begin to fall apart. For example, in the Flocculent Cathedral, where the theme is moss, one of the conditions is, whenever your blood is spilled, it contains masses of minuscule tadpoles that swim slowly through it. No thank you. When you reach 5 ruin, you gain the ability to make the reduction roll, which is how Trophy Dark mechanizes betrayal. To do this, you describe how you are betraying one of the other treasure hunters by sabotaging their actions, disrupting their rituals, or stealing their treasure. It's another simple roll, just 1d6 compared against your current ruin. If you roll less than your current ruin, then your betrayal goes unnoticed and your ruin is decreased by 1. If you don't roll less than your current ruin, well, you have a choice to make. Do you have the betrayal go unnoticed and leave your ruin where it is? Or do you reduce it and have one of the other treasure hunters notice your double cross? This leads to some very tense roleplay as the treasure hunters stab each other in the back and then attempt to explain away their duplicity when they get caught. Finally, we have the contest roll, which are for those high-stakes moments towards the end of an incursion where everyone has turned on each other and you probably just have 2 treasure hunters left alive. When characters act against each other, the players must agree on the stakes and then start to build individual dice pools. You get 1 light die each if you have a relevant skill or a piece of equipment that might help you in this situation. Then you take 1 light dice for each point of ruin you have marked. And then you are allowed to gamble. You are allowed to take as many dark dice as you are willing to risk. When both players eventually stop this game of chicken where they dare each other to add the most dice to their pools, we roll. The most 6s wins the contest, and if there's a tie, it's the most 5s, then the most 4s, and so on. However, each treasure hunter must mark 1 point of ruin for each one they roll on a dark dice in their pool. So there is a huge risk. Contest rolls are climactic, winner-takes-all throwdowns, but if you push your luck, even winning can be the end of you. Should a treasure hunter reach 6 ruin and be lost to the forest, then they describe what that looks like and that character's part of the story is over, but the player continues to be part of the game. They continue to set the stakes for risk rolls and offer devil's bargains from beyond the grave. When you reach the end of Ring 5, the incursion is over. Each player takes a turn narrating an epilogue for their treasure hunter, describing what has become of them or the effects their absence has on the world outside the forest. When epilogues are finished, the game is over. And that is Trophy Dark. If you want to see the system in action, then why not check out me and a wonderful cast playing the Flocculent Cathedral. We get the rules mostly right, which was kind of the inspiration for making this video, but it wasn't too bad for a first attempt. Please like and subscribe and check out the Bad Spot Patreon if you want to support the channel and see more videos like this. But until next time, it's farewell and safe passage.